Greetings, good everything. I figured if we're going to be up this early, we might as well start off with a little foolishness.
Lord have mercy.
Good morning, Dr. Carr. Hi, how
Good
art thou?
morning, Professor Hunter. I am better than I've ever been, to quote Nas and them from Classic. How are you?
I exhausted. So
I
tired of
saw I
y'all.
saw your tweet while I was at the museum yesterday, and I said, let me say something on behalf. I saw so many people. I can't listen. You gotta Chuck D said it takes a nation of millions to hold us back. It's a nation of millions holding you up.
Oh,
When I tell you off of this, the people I talk to, I will say one here at the beginning, and we're gonna come back to her. Minnie Jean Brown, one of the Little Rock Nine,
what?
is a Nubian. She be in
No,
office hours. I came into the moot
no.
courtroom at Howard Law School on Thursday night, like I'm ready to listen to these titans, the Little Rock Nine. And the dean of the law school, Lisa Crooms, walked in with this sister on her arm, and this elder snatched her arm away and said, "Dr. Carr, been waiting. I love you. Tell Karen, listen, I'm a Nubian." They was like, "What?" And then other Nubians started identifying us. So I'm just saying, we all holding you up, sis. I know you exhausted.
No,
I know you tired.
I actually feel held up, so I appreciate that. But that's the goal, right? None
that's,
of us should be doing any of this.
that's the goal.
Life, any life. Now, I'm not even talking about the work. Life is not meant to be done in a singular fashion. So I've always kind of imagined I'm gathering folk who will gather folk who will gather folk who will gather folk, and together we're unstoppable. So I just, I feel that. I feel that. And so it didn't take a whole, you don't need millions of people, but you need millions of people. You know what I'm saying? It's like you get millions of people one at a time who
One at a
go
time.
get another person that covers them. If everybody's covered, then we're all covered. And then some of the people who are covering you are covering me, and
That's
vice versa. And stop playing with us. I'm so
stop.
tired though. I'm so tired.
Well, I mean, because it's too much. It really is too much, and we'll talk about this in a minute. But
How are you before we get into
oh,
this?
I'm better now than I've ever been. I mean, we talked about this in many times. Our first year together when we were in class, in the depth of the pandemic, when everybody was here, or so many more people couldn't go anywhere else, and we talked about the power of the pause, and that's been with me ever since we talked about it. And we think about pauses as being restorative, and we talked about the importance of remembering moments, how we use anniversaries and commemorations to reflect, but also to renew. And those things converged for me yesterday and the day before on the 7th anniversary of the Brown decision. I was sitting with those elders, Nathaniel Briggs, whose parents were represented one of the 20 families in Briggs versus Elliott. And of course, and then I remember when I was in South Carolina a couple of months ago at the Cecil Williams Museum, Cecil Williams talked about this. They petitioned the federal courts to actually put Briggs before Brown, because Briggs was 1948 and was out South Carolina. Mike Harriet writes about this beautifully, that native of South Carolina, but Briggs at one point broke down. This elder, he said, I'm 75 years old. I was in the first grade. I've lived with this my whole life, and we'll talk about what the
What was
price.
the framing of Briggs? So the notion. My mama grew up in Augusta, Georgia. Went to Lucy Laney High School.
Crab Laney.
To this day speaks so. I mean, there's still reunions. They travel together. Her class, the couple of teachers that are still living, there's still a tight. I mean, it feels like glorious. Why would you want to do anything else? Just give us equal money, pay our teachers, give us books that don't have missing pages. We're good. We don't need to be in your trauma experiment.
No, we don't. But there is the fault line.
Okay,
Because
so
there are Negroes who want their whiteness. That came out yesterday. Cheryl Lee Ralph, who actually moderated the panel at the National Museum of African American History and Culture with
is
the
that her?
Little Rock Nine.
There she is. Okay,
You
Shirley.
see her? There she go right there. Yes, ma'am. And she said at the beginning, she said this was never about sitting with white people. And I was like, okay, I see you, Cheryl Lee Ralph. This was about, so the point you're making, but there's a real tension in the Black community. But anyway, I don't want to. We'll talk about that.
No,
You asked me a
I'm
direct
just curious.
question. How I'm
Yeah,
doing.
Briggs.
I'm doing quite well at this moment. I'm doing better than I can ever remember, because Brother Briggs began to break down. He said, "I'm sorry, y'all. This is not anger. This is pain." And Nicole Hannah Jones, who moderated that panel with the folks who were children who fought that fight in Delaware and Virginia, in Kansas with Brown, in South Carolina with Briggs. Nicole said, and we had been talking between in the break between she and I about this. So I said, Nicole, you know how I feel about this. What happened was segregation, apartheid forestalled class stratification in the Black community. Once desegregation was taken out, them Negroes who never wanted to be with the poor were able to escape. And this whole narrative has been framed around that tiny group of Black people who want Black progress, but want it for the elites, and then want to hold out the promise that everybody can be an elite, which is an absolute contradiction in capitalism. And Cole agreed. I mean, how can you not agree? It's not opinion. All you gotta do is look at world damn history to understand class stratification is real. So anyway, so Brother Briggs, who represent humble people, he said, you know what these white people wanted from us in South Carolina? They wanted us in the fields and in their homes. And so anything that contradicted that, and I'm saying that's still what they want. They want us on their damn ball fields. They want us on the stage rapping, talking about I ain't gonna vote for nobody. Shout out to Nicki Minaj. Weaponized ignorance.
Well,
They want to.
I think it was Cardi B. I don't know.
Oh,
I don't know
Cardi
that
B.
Nicki
I'm
ever
sorry.
voted. I
Yeah,
don't know.
Cardi B. Yeah, fine.
I don't know that she votes at all.
Cardi B, Nicki Minaj, Charlamagne the God, Drake and Kendrick, all of you, listen to me, mashed together. Because there is no distinction in a society that frames Blackness in terms of entertainment for any of you in terms of opening your mouths when on something you haven't studied. Anyone listening to you other than let's just have a conversation as human beings. But you are not an expert on anything except your craft, and we should appreciate you for your craft and only for your craft until you have demonstrated, Paul Robeson, Nina Simone, that you are capable of doing something other than speaking ignorance into the world. So anyway, what Brother Briggs said was they only wanted us in the fields and they only wanted us in their houses. And we came out of that box. It was a problem. He said he talked about all the missed birthdays, all the missed time from parents from who couldn't spend time with their children because they're out there on the front line. And Terrence Roberts, who we'll talk about in a minute, who's one of Little Rock Nine, I have his memoir over here, Lessons from Little Rock. He said all these Black teachers, my friend Leslie Fenwick, who was there Thursday night at the law school and then came back and gave a talk before Joe Biden yesterday morning at the museum, who came in to, drape himself in a little Blackness, as if that's going to immunize you, mummy, from what you about to catch in Atlanta. Anyway, all them talking about all these Black teachers, segregated schools like your mama and them, then HBCUs, first class education from the best educators in the country who were Black. And then because they couldn't go to school in the South, went north and got degrees from NYU and Columbia and University of Pennsylvania and University of Chicago and went out west to UCLA and Berkeley and then come back to the South and become elementary school teachers. Are you serious right now about the quality of the teachers? Meanwhile, hillbillies who couldn't put A and B together are then replacing them in the classrooms after Jim Crow. What Leslie said and what Brother Briggs said yesterday, look, those teachers wanted to be scientists and engineers. Those teachers wanted to be musicians. But because they were blocked, they poured their entire lives into those classrooms. And when Terrence Howard said, my first grade teacher, when I was 6 years old at Mifflin Wistar Gibbs Elementary School in Little Rock, my first grade teacher said, you all must become executive directors of your own education. He said, at that point, I opened the Terrence Roberts Academy as a 6-year-old. And all you need in a society, you know what I'm saying? So when Brother Gibbs said, it's not anger, it's pain. And then Nicole tried to frame and said, we should have our pain and we should have our anger. This country should recognize our anger. She's absolutely right, but don't miss what he's saying here. I ain't mad at these white people. I have no investment in your funky set. This is how it has to be. In order for us to be fully human, we got to stop fighting with y'all as the center of our being. We got to repair ourselves. And they were doing that. All they wanted, I'll end with this. Briggs said, all we wanted was a school bus. He said, all my daddy and them and all what Jay Delaney and them wanted was a damn school bus. We was living 8 miles away from the school in the country. We walking past every day in the snow and the rain, whenever it was. We walking past schools with buses, count 19 school buses in these lots. I want one. And when they bought a school bus, the damn state of South Carolina would not allow them to use it because they say we're not going to pay for the maintenance. And so they filed the lawsuit. He said, if y'all are giving us a school bus, we might not even be here. Everybody started laughing. I said, don't miss this point. We never wanted to sit next to y'all. Give us the stuff. So I'm feeling great this morning because we have created this space.
Come on.
Oh, it's coming down, baby. It's coming down. I feel great sitting with those elders. And anybody want to talk about not voting? Come on in office hours. Get at me, please. Let's talk. Let's have a discussion. I ain't mad at you. You've been miseducated. You've been hoodwinked, bamboozled. These people have reached into your soul and turned you inside out, and now you are parroting ignorance. So let's talk. Yeah, I'm feeling great, Professor Hunter.
So, what do we do when the marching orders and the framing and the blueprint and the game plan is created by people who don't want to be a part of the community to begin with? And I'm not saying Thurgood Marshall and them are part of that,
No, Thurgood
but
Marshall is partially.
I know I was not going to say that. I knew you were going to say it.
Marvin,
Leave
don't
it up
worry.
for you to say it.
Tell Marvin's in the Nubia chat. She said, "Don't get your blood pressure up. Don't worry. I got my little thing on. I check my blood pressure every hour, and I don't need because I ain't had a cup of caffeinated coffee since the day before we went to Kemet. It's decaf.
Come on. And what they don't know, because we're both wired that way, this is actually making sure that we don't have high blood pressure or
Oh,
ulcers.
no question. My
So
blood pressure is better now.
mine
Oh my
too.
God.
So let's all get it out.
Blood pressure,
Because N is bad.
Blood pressure is a part of being a figment of the white imagination. That's when your blood pressure goes up. How come I don't have high blood pressure like that in other parts of the African world? Why? Because you ain't got to deal with this white damn ghost in your mind. Get that ghost out your mind and watch your blood pressure go down.
Yep. Completely good here. So like I think about this like even in the framing of like a Juneteenth holiday, federal holiday, and I was like, who voted for this? And I'm glad Mother Opal Lee went out and did all of that. And you want to honor the elders and things, but when do we have these collective meetings and then we all got to go along with it? Because I feel like I was always like, why would you traumatize young people? Poor Ruby Bridges, even the image of her being called the N-word, little girl, tomatoes, grown people throwing tomatoes and yelling N-word at this little girl trying to get educated, and the teachers don't want you in there, don't want you in there, and all of this trauma because so we could have what exactly? That's not like I'm saying, like when decisions like this are made, we just got to go along with it because so many people fought so hard for this and it's wrong, and nobody put a church finger up and say, just give us a damn school bus. Y'all don't want us. We don't want to be there.
We put it up here. You're absolutely right. I mean, that was an attempt to lessen the pressure after the summer of 2020. We know that. But you're raising something that is listen, let me just say, I will never stop saying how grateful I am. I think we all are for this space, really, because we have to be clear now. There are too many spaces that mischaracterize our people. There are too many spaces that want to use the long freedom movement as a battering ram to get two Negroes in a room where they can make 6-7 figures salary and say we made black progress. And then when you listen to the people who you want to use as an avatar for your aspirations, your class aspirations, what they tell you is the thing you're terrified of. Your thing you're terrified of is being fully human in the world, because guess who that terrifies? That terrifies everybody who has an investment in you not being fully human in the world. And in a racial capitalist society, that is whiteness, not white people. Because we talked about lawyers like Jack Greenberg, who argued with Lewis Redding, the first black lawyer in Delaware, the case in Delaware that became the case where the white high school reached out to the black students and said, we want you to go to school here. We know we're breaking the law when you enroll. When they enrolled at the white high school, they were breaking Delaware law. That allowed the lawsuits to be filed. And then that case got folded into the Brown cases. And then when Jack Greenberg and Lewis Redding argued the case at the Supreme Court, Greenberg made the point, the court can't, well, will it work? It's already working in Delaware. Got you. It's already working in Delaware. Jack Greenberg's a white man and a Jew. Understand? Jack Greenberg cried in the court. I mean, so we're not going to play that game. I heard that caller that called in this week when you had Dan on earlier in the week. I mean, we're not going to get caught up in this game. Whiteness is the enemy, not people.
Yeah. And also blackness is the problem, because here's how this happens, right? There's a special magical Negro that has access to white power, the people in power who may not think they're racist. So because they're talking to this black person, right? So whether it's Lincoln and Frederick Douglass or I'm not going to start naming names, but
No,
in
no.
this
Listen, we gotta take the next step, please. I mean, we can do
okay.
this in a way because
All
we,
right, in this generation, it's a Van Jones who has access to white power, right?
come on now, come on.
So
And Van
Bezos,
Jones is I know Van Jones. Van Jones is a friend. Van, you're wrong, brother, and that's fine. We should talk about it. And
yeah,
if
but
you
in his mind, I'm making gains for black people. So,
exactly,
so Bezos says here, if I'm going to give $100 million to anyone, it's going to be this black man because it
don't be wrong.
also absolves me of feeling like I am anything but. I'm not a racist, so I gave Van Jones $100 million. And I see him out at the Hamptons, or he's in these board meetings and all of this. So he's black. So I've now absolved myself from any responsibility because Van said, but Van's not in our community. But they don't know that. And when he's in these rooms talking about criminal justice reform and all of this other stuff, which is amazing,
Yes, he's
he's
in our demographic community, and there are
is
moments.
he if white is a made up construct, so is black, Dr.
No, no,
Carr.
I agree. No, no, no. I'm not disagreeing with you. What I'm saying is that the demographic creates the context that we have to break out of. But here's the trap: the breaking out of it is going to require an embrace of something that we never had to create before. This is the genius, it seems to me, of Howard French's book. Howard French is like, we don't know what African people would have looked like had they not been interrupted, but we can kind of see in terms of the long, thousands of years of development what direction they were going to. I am thoroughly convinced we would not have created what we now know as countries or nation states. Because these frameworks are antithetical to human development.
Yeah,
But we'll never know. So now what we have is blackness. What segregation did was forestall the class stratification, and for that brief moment between formal enslavement and oppression to so-called desegregation, what we had was a window where we were furiously trying to develop a we. And what desegregation does is disrupt that. And now the class stratification emerged. And now the thing that we have in common with Van Jones is skin color.
right.
But skin
Right.
color was never the basis of our we. We were trying to build a we. This is a delicate. That's why I'm working so hard to get this class together, this second iteration, because it's time out now for these misinterpretations. Every commemoration, every anniversary, it is the elites attempting to foment on the rest of us this. I won't say us because we're technically in that group, but in the mass of our people trying to foment this concept. And when the mass of people reject it, to me, that's the metaphor for I ain't voting, I ain't vote. There is a frustration,
Yeah.
but it's all finally being framed by a whiteness that, as Briggs said yesterday, requires us to be on the bottom. So there's no threat when you narrate it that way. So Derek Johnson yesterday, who, in between breaks, I hemmed him up. We're gonna have a conversation about this not coming out of Tennessee State, bro. He said, "You alum?" Yeah. He said, "So what's the alum doing?" I said, "Alum is fighting and struggling." He said, "Well, we got to engage in a type of work that isn't protest, that isn't performance politics." I said, "I fully agree, but you just gave Shannon Sharp an award." That's what I told him. Look, bro, I ain't got no dog in this, man. Let's dance.
What'd he
You
say?
just gave Shannon Sharp an award, so image matters, and you got a whole image award thing. So what does it mean when you come into a space representing us and move? And it was an amicable conversation because then we start talking about Title VI and lawsuits. I'm not mad at none of y'all.
Did he
I
respond?
understand.
Did he
Huh?
respond to the Shannon Sharp question?
Yeah, I do agree. It wasn't nothing to
Damn it.
say. That's
How
what I'm
did
saying. I mean,
wait,
I'm not mad. I'm
okay,
not
so
mad.
let me just say, I'm not talking about Van Jones is a a marker for what this looks like. 'Cause
Exactly. And I'm not
I don't
talking
think
about
in his
Van
mind,
Johnson.
I don't think
Marketing.
he's trying to destroy black
No
progress. I
question.
think he thinks he's doing it. But again, the arrogance of that you could do that alone, that you could do that without consultation of many people that you don't even agree with, to me is where we are right now. And we've seen it in our quote unquote leadership time and time again, where that one person who has access thinks they know all of the things and they're not bringing everybody into the room with them, because it can't be you're not smarter than everybody. And even
No.
the notion that you are is crazy to me.
Well, that's why I think it's complicated because there are some who think they're smarter than everybody and try to play off with the fake humility. Shout out to Skip Gates. But there are others who, as you say, and I think this is most of us, who genuinely think we are trying to do what's best, which is why I always often say, we don't think we can win, so we make deals. And by winning, I mean being fully human in the world, showing up on our terms. I'm not talking about the expression of fullness of humanity when people say, I love my blackness and yours, or black joy. I mean, no. I'm not talking about that at all, quite frankly, because that's not a threat either. It might be perceived as a threat. It's certainly an irritant to complex forces. But yesterday the third panel, was it the third panel of the day? Maybe the fourth if you count the mummy who came in at the beginning. But the final convening panel of the day was a discussion, a very short discussion between the president of NAACP, Derek Johnson, the chair of the board of the NAACP, Leon Russell, who's done a lot of work internationally, and it showed up in his comments yesterday, as did Derek comments. A lot of international work, which is where I'm going with this in a minute. And Gigi Peak Dixon, Georgette Peak Dixon, who was a senior executive at Wells Fargo. And Gigi, that's my girl. I've known Gigi about 40 years. Gigi was the student body president at Tennessee State University back in the day, a few years before me, in fact. Good sister. And so she moderated the conversation. And she asked about DEI, which kept coming up. We'll talk about that too. And one of the things Derek Johnson said was, he talked about taking young people to Ghana and how these young people of African descent, these young black people from the United States, saw these African people, he said, and they saw us in every role in a society, from the airplane pilots to the people working in the businesses to people on the streets selling fruit, anything, every element of a society. Footnote, I was at the barbershop this week, sitting, go to this barbershop in the neighborhood. It's mostly Continental Africans cutting hair, but everybody comes in. I like it because it's really a Pan-African. I know it's Pan-African irritates some of y'all. Get irritated. Come on, vomit it up. Vomit it up. Come on. It'll do you good. Once you vomit it up, we gonna use some clean water. You get your system back. Your system's there. It'll reset. But I know that's not most of us, but there are a few people in here. Welcome. Please come. More of you. Bring your friends. I want all of it. All of this smoke. Pay a little fee and come on in the Knarrative. Come on to office hours and let's talk. Because we're going to agree to agree. We're going to get that vomit up out of you. So I like it because it's African people from all over the Caribbean, United States, people come in. And so I'm sitting in the chair. My man, George, he cutting hair. We talking. And how's the family? He's building a house in Ghana for his mom. And he's working 2 jobs. He give me a testimony, boy. Talk about ways of knowing. Good African, good continental African, good Christian. He goes to a church that some of the Zambian community have founded here in the DMV. And he was telling me about how he had worked all night. This is his regular shift. He goes to work at 11 o'clock. He gets off at 7. He goes home, changes clothes, comes in, cuts hair until 4, then goes home, eats, take a nap, go back and starts it all over. He's been doing this for years, sending money home. All you anti-immigrant people, let's dance. Come on in, officer. Let's talk about it. Because see, when you say you against immigrants, please understand that that's how your parents work. That's how you work. And the difference between you and George from Ghana is where you came out your mother's womb. Stop letting these white people set you off against each other. You stop it or continue. But what we're not going to do is get distracted with that foolishness. Anyway, so he's talking. And about a month ago, because I go a month between haircuts. I'm not wedded to the haircuts all the time. But he said he went to sleep. He fell asleep behind the wheel, and he pulls his phone out. He shows me the tree he ran into, totaled his car. I said, "Man, you all right?" He said, "Yeah, man." He said, "I went to sleep in a split second, hit that tree. I didn't feel it. The air blast deployed. There must be the white I saw." And the next thing you know, he said this white lady was coming walking her dog. And she said, "Are you all right?" He said, "Oh, yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay." Called the police. The cops didn't even give him a ticket because he had fallen asleep. They towed the car, whatever. He said, "But in that moment after I crashed, I'm here, hitting this tree. I hit this tree. I didn't even know I hit the tree till I woke up. The car, he showed me pictures of the car. The car's totaled. Like, the fact that he didn't come out without a scratch, no back pain, neck pain, nothing was a miracle." He said, "But this bird He said his bird landed on the branch of the tree, and the bird was just looking at me. I'm sitting in this thing with this air bag deployed, his laser. Are you all right? And he says, he showed me. He said, and somehow I took a picture of the bird. I said, you took a picture of the bird, man? You just had a cry. He said, I know. You know why I took a picture of the bird? And then he showed me another picture. It was a Tuesday. You know why he knew it was a Tuesday? He said it was a Tuesday because he gets these messages. His mom is like my mom, one of them prayer warriors. Like, and he called her a prayer warrior. This is why I love that. Let's stop arguing with where you came out your mother's womb from. This is why I'm coming back to Derek. I'm putting this in. This is a footnote coming what Derek was talking about yesterday. Johnson, president of the NCP. He showed me a picture of the little Bible saying that he had gotten on his phone that morning when he was at work, before he got off work, fell asleep in his car, hit the tree, and the bird came looking at him. He showed me a picture of the bird first. Bird with a white breast, little black wings, and a red crown. Then he showed me a picture of the picture with the Bible verse. The Bible verse was imposed on a picture of a bird. White breast, black wings, red crown. Stop playing with the ancestors. I said, yo, that's not the same bird. He said, it's the same bird. I said, bruh, you could not have gotten this picture on the morning you had a crash. And that same bird, he said, that bird was there looking at me since, all right, I'm just checking on you. You can't make this up. Now, I raised that because we had started the conversation because he had said, did you see Stevie Wonder is a citizen of my country now? I said, I saw that. I said, he's been talking about that since the 70s, bro. Y'all saw last week the Stevie Wonder, whose birthday, of course, we celebrated last week. Stevie Wonder became a citizen of Ghana this week. He was over there with his family, the president of Ghana. He said, I've been talking about this since 1972. Remember, he told, and then George brought it up. Remember when he said that to Oprah? I said, oh, I remember what he said to Oprah. When he said, I'm going to Ghana. Why? I'm tired in this society. We talking about, please love me. Please accept me. What kind of shit is that? Remember when he said that? And Oprah sitting there, yeah. Anyway, you can go to the Hermes store in Africa, particularly in South Africa. Ain't that right, Jack? Go down to Sandtown with that big statue of Nelson Mandela. They got the luxury brands down there. You don't have to give up any luxury brands if you want to get them in Africa. But you don't have to beg for your humanity either, not in the same way. And so Derek Johnson yesterday, when prompted by Gigi Peak to talk about diversity, said, I took these black students to Ghana. They saw blackness in all of its variations. Of course, I'm sitting there thinking about what Richard Pryor said in that famous routine when he was in East Africa and he saw Africans being the president of the bank. And he said, damn, that's Willie the Wino. That's what he was supposed to be. And that's when he said he gave up the N-word, by the way. And so we'll come back to the N-word. Terrence Roberts said something in his memoir about the N-word at those segregated schools in Little Rock and about what the N-word, how corrosive it is. This is for the people. Yeah, but I guess I would include Kendrick in this. Tried to make niggas the N-word. And you know, you can't redeem that word, son. You can't. But we'll come back to that in a minute. So Derek was talking, you know, and it reminded me of what Richard Pryor said. He said, I got to give up the N-word. Why? Because I ain't seen not an N-word in Africa. But this is when superimposed on us, this word is poison. And then Pryor ends that bit by saying, you know, we were the first people in the world, the first human beings who stood up, Jack. We created everything. We were the first to say, who am I? How do I get to Detroit? No, I mean, that joke, whatever. Shout out to Kevin Hart, who got the Mark Twain Prize. You think they get those prizes to people who talk like that? Anyway, the point is this. As I was thinking about the Richard Pryor routine when I listened to Jerry Johnson yesterday, and then Jerry says this. President Johnson says this. He says, that seeing of possibilities in our people and blackness, the possibilities, you know, that's what we have to be after here in the United States. That is what DEI does. It exposes us to different experiences and it shows us that we're capable. And I thought to myself, that's true to a point, but you just drove your entire metaphor into the ditch. So seeing white bank executives, and you're a bank executive too, that gives you a sense of your empowerment. It absolutely does. I'm not anti-DEI. Absolutely not. But the larger point, the point that you struck on there just for a split second, hit it and quit it, because you can't connect what you talking about, what those black kids saw, with what you are gesturing towards here, which will keep the dollars flowing, of course, is that there is something in the humanity of our people that must be fully recovered and restored, repaired, in order for us to move forward. And it doesn't come, to echo Cheryl Lee Ralph, from sitting next to white people in the classroom. In fact, the price we have paid, as Leslie Fenwick writes in her book, Jim Crow's Pink Slip, as I look at it over on the shelf, as we've talked about many times, was 100,000 Black principals and teachers run out of the profession, either through demotion or firing. The human shield of our teachers, the excellent teaching force across so many of the segregated schools. And Terrence Roberts said this about Little Rock. I'll come back to that now. This is Lessons from Little Rock. This is Terrence Roberts' book, One of Little Rock Nine. He is a PhD psychologist. When the bastard governor of Arkansas, Orville Faubus, who some people call a racial moderate, I don't know what that is in terms of white supremacy. They're soft white nationalists. In fact, whoever thinks that the racial moderates are somehow so qualitatively different that we can't engage in the critique of whiteness that excludes them, please, as we did in Nubia in office hours, read Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos and Community. Read Martin Luther King, not the fictional king, but the inconvenient hero, as Vincent Harding, his friend, wrote in his book, Martin Luther King, The Inconvenient Hero. He'll tell you about that. In fact, Joe Biden will probably experience a little taste of that tomorrow at Morehouse's graduation. And before he goes to Detroit, I mean, dude, you trying to get doubled up Blackness. I mean, although the president of Morehouse has said that if somebody shows out, he going to stop the convocation, stop graduation. I know Dr. Thomas is under extreme pressure. All these Negro college presidents are. But in Lessons from Little Rock, what Terrence Roberts talks about is these. In fact, let me just go to page 21. It's in the second chapter of his book. He says, let me go to the schools. Here we go. He said, at Dunbar Junior High, and we laughed about it because I talk about Dunbar all the time, all the Dunbars, including Little Rock. Because again, I said, as I told them on Thursday night, I said, in my Education in Black America class, I'm constantly asking the students, y'all know about the Little Rock Nine, right? Yeah, okay. Where'd they go to school before that? And they put that front and center in the conversations they had Thursday night and Friday, which I was very happy about. Barbara Roberts says, at Dunbar Junior High, I encountered a series of demanding teachers who challenged me to take what seemed to be a gift for learning and use it to full advantage. Mrs. Rita Tate in mathematics. Oh, Professor Hunter, you talk about your mom and knowing the names of these teachers. And some of those teachers that are still around, they remember the names of their teachers. Mrs. Rita Tate in mathematics taught us secrets about numbers and their relationships to one another. She made algebra and geometry understandable and fun. And she never missed an opportunity to teach us about life in general. Each day on the blackboard, she would have a message in chalk for us to absorb. One I still remember read, "He who thinks by the inch and talks by the yard should be removed by the foot." I would be willing to swear that Miss Tate owned only 2 dresses. She would wear one of the 2 every other day, and she seemed quite content to do it. She seemed to me totally dedicated to teaching us mathematics. She was not interested in fashion or owning a wide variety of outfits, but she was interested in our learning about math. What would she have been in a non-racist society? Maybe she would have continued to be a teacher, but teaching has been so devalued as a profession now it's a punchline and a joke. That came up over and over again yesterday. He goes on to write in English class, Mr. Thomas Foster gently encouraged us to go beyond the ordinary in our quest to learn the intricacies of the language. I was teased a lot by my classmates for reading the dictionary, but Mr. Foster saw merit in it. He assigned poetry for us to commit to memory and recite in front of the class. There was a time when I knew every syllable of, quote, a leak in the dike, end quote, having accepted a challenge from Mr. Foster, who said that a boy in a previous year's class had memorized the poem and had given a mistake-free rendition of it in class. Can our young people do this? Of course, they do it every day. Every hip-hop lyric, every song lyric in the world. But in the classrooms, we say we're going to use hip-hop to teach. I use it. I teach a class in hip-hop, but I don't displace the fact that that is not a replacement for the deep literacy of engaging with your ancestors. So let's get that foundation and then connect it to the things you want to do. Because if you don't, well, you end up sounding like Drake and Kendrick. He goes on and says, there was Mr. Joe Elston, whom we all call Big Red, when he wasn't around. Mr. Elston rarely smiled, but he saw to it that we learned as much as he could teach us about things scientific. Gossip among the student body was that Mr. Elston was frustrated because he could not obtain a position as a scientist, the work he had studied for. This was not an uncommon plight for many college and university trained African American professionals in Little Rock. He seemed to be angrier about this than most of the high school teachers in the same situation, and we students were often on the receiving end of his angry verbal outbursts. He told us this was deliberate, that he meant to light a fire under us to motivate us to succeed. Mrs. Cleon Dozell, on the other hand, offered us counsel and guidance about life issues as well as instruction in literature. She motivated us to succeed with gentle encouragement. Final paragraph. My 7th grade homeroom teacher, Mrs. Thelma Dozier, would close and lock the door each morning prior to giving us lectures about comportment, appearance, manners, and behavior. Pause. Footnote. People talk about this being the politics of respectability, and I agree in that critique. I often quickly add that everything is a politics of respectability. So when Big Daddy Kane in The Vapor said he wore his pants sagging down and his sneakers untied and a Rasta type Kango tilted to the side, okay, that's acceptable. That's your style. And if you don't have that style in the neighborhood at a certain time, a certain point in time, a certain culture, you might be looked at suspect. That too is a politics of respectability. My point is that it isn't respectability that's the problem. It's the context in which you've created cultural meaning making and then attached value to it. If you don't have your pants sagging, people looking like you. In this generation, if you had your pants sagging, you'd have been sent home. Or the teacher would have took off his belt and given it to you. If you came in with as we would say in my generation, your generation, Professor Hunter, and the generation of so many in here right now, newbie and YouTube, and those who will watch later on in the week as we continue this invaluable work that I am so fired up now to take to the next level that you all cannot imagine having sit with those elders. You know, if you had come up with, as our parents would have said, with no clothes on, meaning, I mean, now, I couldn't even describe it. I mean, I see teenagers and 20-somethings now with underwear coming to class. And I just, more and more I've taken to, teaching class looking at the sky. But at any rate, because if you're not embarrassed, I'm embarrassed for you, but I can't really say anything about it because I don't want to trigger this is a point of entry. Let me just try to figure this out. I'm not going to, do that. But in this day, you'd have been sent home or given a blouse or a skirt or something. So there is a respectability. Back to the paragraph. Again, I'll read that sentence I just started with to make that pause. He says, my 7th grade homeroom teacher, Mrs. Thelma Dozier, would close and lock the door each moment prior to giving us lectures about comportment, appearance, manners, and behavior. Our teachers encourage us also to pay close attention to the lessons in Negro history, a required course at Dunbar. A required course at Dunbar. A required course at Dunbar. Oh, the white supremacist governors of Florida and Texas, the white nationalist legislatures behind the Cotton Curtain, and their sympathizers around the country. The Project 2025 architects who cannot wait, who are salivating at the idea of Donald Trump getting back into the Oval Office, and those who are supported to the who are vulnerable to the weaponized ignorance of the Cardi B's of the world to say, I don't F with either one of y'all, but who has enough money to leave the country in case, and a passport to go somewhere else when things go south. And the people who spend their money at concerts that she is in are trapped in a white nationalist fever dream, and she's in the islands continuing to make music. These people will say that there should be no Black history. There should be anything that makes us feel bad. The Morgan Freemans of the world, I don't say African American, but I'm not African. No, you're a sidekick. A brilliant actor sidekick. There was a time when you were easy reader, but I guess you weren't reading the books that you were advocating for children to read when you were on the electric company. Because for all of your genius acting, and I loved it because I saw so many young people yesterday, including a few of my former students who now work for the NAACP, who were festooned with your friend LeVar Burton's face as they were, because they give books away. You understand? It was so good to see this intergenerational thing, and I was saying, so you got LeVar Burton in there. Yeah. So, but anyway, we're not talking about, of course, Easy Reader. That's forgotten. And Morgan Freeman, I guess, Glory, he got beat up in the 54th Massachusetts so bad he lost his damn mind. I know you're not African, brother. But the point is that, we shouldn't be doing Black history. Well, guess when they were doing Black history? When we were behind apartheid. And it was a required course at Paul Laurence Dunbar of Little Rock, the school that Terrence Roberts went to after he went to uh, Gibbs Elementary. And by the way, Wistar Gibbs was one of the, if not the first black lawyer, and he became a judge in Arkansas. Understand? And he went from that elementary school where his first grade teacher said, you must become an executive director of your education. And he said, that's when I opened the Terrence Roberts Educational Institution, which is basically me and reading and whoever's going to help me. But he was surrounded by those teachers. And here, when he was at Dunbar, where they had required black history, he got there. And then he went to Horace Mann for a minute. And then he becomes one of the Little Rock Nine. And in this social structure that we live in, the only thing that whiteness is interested in is seeing these 9 young people come into a building where the teachers are demonstrably, thank you, Leslie, thank you for Jim Crow's pink slip, demonstrably inferior to the teachers they had at the segregated schools. Teachers who, to quote, was it Minnie Jean Brown yesterday? Miss Minnie Jean, I said, she lives on the West Coast. So, she was talking about coming in and she travels a lot. They always want all of them to go places and talk. And so she said, one of these days I'm going to come in the office hour. I said, when you come, please, we just going to please, it'll be an honor. Because she a Nubian. She in here all the time. She may be here right now. Well, she probably not, because they was at the White House. They done, 7th anniversary of Brown. Let's trot them all out. Oh, but when you listen to them in a governance formation, it's a very different conversation. In fact, let me show y'all something right quick before I finish this. This is, of course, Daisy Bates, The Long Shadow of Little Rock. This is a copy that I had here that I didn't put into storage. And I was so angry because, I put most of my books, including books that they've written, in storage. But I had this one, The Ancestors Home, and I had Terrence Roberts' book. So I got him to sign it, his book. And then I thought about it because Elizabeth Eckford, one of the Little Rock Nine, said of our fellow Nubian and sister, Minnie Jean Brown, she said, we were trained to be nonviolent, but after King came out, Daisy Bates, of course, Jim Lawson, she said, but Minnie Jean and her people, they're a different kind of Negro. And everybody started laughing. Now, I loved, oh my God, Gloria Ray told a story. She said, I and first of all, they didn't put any of these students in Central High School, these black students, in the same class. So they are surrounded by a sea of whiteness, most of it hostile. And she said, I put my book binder, she says, me and my sister did a lot of sewing at home. So we took straight pens. I put straight pens, from home, I put them all in my book binder. So when they came up to hit, she said, they stopped that right quick. If they was going to attack me, they had to attack me from behind. And she said, one day they attacked me, and I'm looking at the National Guard dude. He over the other side of the hall. He ain't paying attention. He's loving it. So they in there every day going to war. I'm saying, so let me go to the point. It was Elizabeth Eckford who said of Minnie Jean, no, she was a different kind of Negro. Because when they would go in those classrooms, this is where all this talk about critical race theory and Moms for Liberty and all this is where it came out yesterday and the day before, but really yesterday. They were talking about how when they went in the classrooms, the teachers, I think it was Miss Gloria that said, I loved history. I was a history buff. I loved it. I loved my teachers. I loved my teachers in segregated school. I came to Central. I'm in the class. This white woman talking about, the Civil War wasn't about slavery. The Civil War was about states' rights and the federal government trying to impose. And she said, the teacher said, Nathaniel Bedford Forrest, the founder of the Klan, founded the Ku Klux Klan to protect white women because white women were under assault. And she said the students were all in there nodding, agreeing, because that's all they've ever heard. I'm sitting there seething. She said, but then Miss Minnie Jean, our fellow Nubian, Miss Minnie Jean said, they tried to pull some stuff on me talking about slavery. And she said, slavery was beneficial. That's what they did. She said, that's not how I heard it. So, of course, you getting written up and sent to the office. It said, Minnie Jean Brown and her family is a different kind of Negro. But see, all of us, while they're under the constant threat of assault. Anyway, so after we finished, conversation, because as I said, I fell in love with them. And Miss Minnie Jean, she grabbed me when we before the program started. We sitting there having a great time, sitting there talking. And so after it was over, they go to reception. We stand around talking. I said, would y'all mind signing my copy of Daisy Bates' book? And they had their own analysis of their book, and they got books coming out. There's a book coming out, in fact, Miss Gloria, I think, has a book that's going to come out. No. It's Miss Eckford, Miss Elizabeth Eckford. Her book's coming out in October overseas. So I told her, please give me the information, because she said then it'll be published in the United States, but I think it's coming out of where's E.J. Brill? Brill is not the publisher, but it made me think of Brill. I want to say the Netherlands, maybe. But anyway, she said, because we got to tell. I said, yeah, y'all got to tell y'all stories, because these historians and these scholars who make a living off of showing people they smart by making university press books about y'all, they don't get to tell this story. Y'all got to tell this story. And then you want to tell it by combining common elements, that's fine. But they got, and so they're doing that. So I said, no problem. So as I'm standing there, they signed in my book. Bob Terrence signed his memoir. Dean of Law School comes up, my dear friend Lisa Crooms, who says, Dr. Carr, you had a cut. And then she just said, of course you do. I said, of course. What you think? I'm over it. So this is for the Little Rock Nine who signed Daisy Bates' book. And Elizabeth Eckford, of course, that's her in the famous photo when she got there late and these white people was behind her screaming. She had to go down the end of the block and sit on that bus stop by herself. She told that story. Oh my God. So yeah, Minnie Jean Brown, Gloria Ray, Terrence Roberts, and Elizabeth Eckford signed my copy. And Carlotta Walls was not there. She was there the next day, but I didn't get a chance to talk with her yesterday. And I didn't even bring my copy because, quite frankly, shout out to my people at the National Museum of African American History and Culture, because I often will just kind of come down there. And so, I knew that the mummy was going to be there because you see the police cars lined up all around. And it was so funny because I must have counted about a dozen Trump shirts. Didn't see any hats, but I saw Trump 2024. I saw what we knew would happen after they took that mugshot in Georgia, the Trump mugshot with a campaign, we want him reelected. And I would say probably the youngest person I saw with one of those shirts on was maybe around 9 or 10. The oldest probably a late teen. And it's always something for me when these school trips come and people come to DC and the young people got the Trump shirts on and the Trump hats and this kind of thing. It's one thing to see them on the National Mall. I mean, they're young people, right? You got to be carefully taught, as the old story goes from the musical. And but it's quite another thing to see them in the National Museum of African American History and Culture. It's always cracking me up. So anyway, in the front of the Oprah Winfrey Theater, the opening session already started. I had no interest in seeing Joe Biden, quite frankly. And I was coming in, I saw Stephen Horsford. And, I didn't wear no African clothes. Thursday night, I got dressed because these elders are. Yesterday, I put on a baseball cap and my hoodie. I had the Alpha hoodie on, which, I said, okay, I'll come down here because, I know how to move in these different spaces. If you see people, right? Steve Horford came out, Congressman Horford. And that's when I knew Biden had gone because I seen the CBC people leaving. He saw me. I said, he threw up the sign. I threw up the sign. He kept going. New President Howard, Ben Vinson. I gave him a fist bump. Where are you going? I'm going downstairs where you just came from because that's over. And I saw all these people, all these white kids, clearly in town for their school trips where they're, matching shirts, this kind of thing. They all lined up to take pictures thinking they're going to catch Biden coming out of the auditorium. Now, if you think Joe Biden going to come out the public exit, this is a thing a lot of people don't know about the Smithsonian museums, particularly the National Museum of African American History and Culture. The part you can see and walk around in, that's maybe half the building, maybe less. But the large places, the storage places, the other, that stuff, the stuff above, the galleries, that's where most of the stuff is. Of course, he went out another exit. They ain't going to let him come out. So by the time I got in there, they were in the break. That's when I, saw people and had a conversation. But so anyway, so let me finish with this and then come back to the point. So Terrence Roberts is writing about his teachers, and then we stopped with his 7th grade homeroom teacher, Miss Thelma Dozier, would close and lock the door each morning prior to giving us lectures about comportment, appearance, manners, and behavior. Our teachers encouraged us also to pay close attention to lessons in Negro history, a required course at Dunbar, in which we learned all about Black people who had made significant contributions to American society, including Carter G. Woodson, the historian with an earned PhD from Harvard University, whose efforts led to the eventual establishment of Black History Month, because most of our teachers treated us as if we were members of one big family. They were the parents, and we were expected to be obedient children. And he goes on to talk about comportment. He goes on, but in terms of, let me end this with the N word, because he talked about being trained to speak. He was student body president. He led the class assemblies in the mornings by singing the Star Spangled Banner. And they're gonna sing that and lift every voice and sing. This in the segregated schools. Then they get shipped off to Central, This is where the photos come in, and that's how they're frozen in the narrative of our memory, which is why we got to green these brown fields. Brown been misinterpreted. Y'all, you looking at the wrong thing. We Africanized, tried to some of these spaces. That's what diversity, equity, inclusion is, as far as I'm concerned. That's what Du Bois said in real time. We're trying to Africanize this. In other words, Du Bois said, I'm fighting for two things. Remember when we read that in office hours in the education of Black people, his last essay, the speech, Whither, Now, and Why, where he predicted what would happen after desegregation, the collapse of the teaching force, students not wanting to go to school no more, all this assault on our memory. He said, I've been fighting for two things my whole life. One, for the elimination of race discrimination, and two, for the African contribution to modern society as it was in medieval and ancient society. It is the second one where our promise lies, and it is the second one that we haven't touched, because this is a society that has frozen us in a racial narrative that will keep us in a racial hierarchy and tell us that that's what we wanted. It is a lie. Terrence Roberts said this. Let me see if I can find the home, because he was talking about how his homeroom teacher, Miss Dozier, had to break up a fight, and how, because she would lock that door and give them this talk, right? So let me see. She would visually inspect their attire every day. If it wasn't right, tell them go home and change. Here it is. One morning, just before the homeroom bell sounded, a fight erupted in the hallway. Two boys were being egged on by the bystanders, who shouted instructions and offered unsolicited advice to the combatants about how to conduct the fight. And he brought that point up, and several of them did too. Everything wasn't rosy. I'm not talking about the lack of resources. One of the schools they were in, this was in South Carolina, was a school that was built for 125 students. There were 500 students in it, and they put tar shacks around that when it rained, it would come in, it would mess up. They had a potbelly stove in the middle of the stove in the room. If you close to it, you burn it up. If you're away from it, you're freezing. They wanted the resources. Remember when Charlie Houston and Thurgood Marshall came and went down to the South, and Thurgood Marshall's first time deep South, although he's from Maryland, and Charles Houston was making film of all these dilapidated buildings, all these structures. They wanted the resources. The metaphorical school bus, the literal school bus in South Carolina. But so what they were saying is our schools were inferior in terms of material conditions. Our teachers, many of them were brilliant because they had not only better qualified, overqualified really, certainly than the white people who were teaching, but they were also, and this is the key word they were talking about yesterday, creative. Because we don't have the resources. Here we are in Narrative in Nubia. Prof, I'm so full because we are not relying on the grants that cause us to have to be mute and to tell the truth in the breaks between the panels. We are not relying on the largesse of people who are very comfortable when it's 2 or 3 Negroes. And then when there's 4, we got a problem. And then when there's somebody who say, we don't care nothing what you're talking about, you have to be ignored. Because whiteness is threatened by the full common humanity of everyone, because that eliminates whiteness. Blackness is great as long as it's trapped as a demographic. In fact, we don't even know, we haven't fully articulated what blackness is, and having given up on the effort, many of these egghead Negro intellectuals want to define it in terms of everything being black. Because it's too difficult to embrace the fact that it is the rejection of Africa as equal, as Michael Gomez writes on the last page of his book, Exchanging Our Country Marks, is the rejection of Africa as equal, as fully human, that lies at the heart of the modern world system, as Howard French writes in Born in Blackness. That is the thing that is too hard to imagine. So let's just redefine blackness to mean anything. It could mean Anthony Edwards hitting a 3-pointer. It could mean, Whitney Houston or Beyonce at a concert singing, oh, it's all black everything. My love, my blackness, and yours, black joy, black futurism. Everybody calm down. It didn't threaten anything, did it? No, in fact, you can make a lot of money on it. Let's have a beef that makes the record company $1 billion and makes me a few little dollars as well. What the hell are you doing? I'm celebrating my blackness, the non-threatening blackness, the blackness that is beautiful, the blackness that can then dissolve into a pathology that sometimes is captured on tape in a hotel room or hotel lobby, as we've seen in the last 24 hours. It dissolves into a pathology because that is the same pathology that would have you make an entire generation of songs. Immolating yourself, not emulating, but immolating, IMMOLATING, setting yourself on fire and celebrating it as if it is progress. and then taking a couple of pennies, shaving a couple of pennies off the profits, and maybe donating it to a place like Howard University, who's probably going to have to get that $1 million back if they ever got it. My point, we're shocked that there's gambling going on in this establishment. This ain't Casablanca. This ain't the 1940s. This is real life happening every day. This is the beef for real, as most deaf would say. This is the beef for real. But that blackness that is being celebrated is a pathological blackness. And if you try to critique it, you are met with, see, you being classist, you being bougie, you being, no. I'm being what Du Bois said in the wake of the Brown decision. This is what's going to happen with desegregation. The teachers are going to disappear, the human shield. And remember what we read when we were talking about Du Bois, and Du Bois wrote that you're using our children as battering rams to get into those institutions. And what's going to happen to them after this? I'm telling you, Nathaniel Briggs told us what happened, the price they paid, the silences they embraced. And so what the point I'm trying to make at this moment, though, is that in those segregated schools, they were not perfect. It wasn't just that they didn't have material resources. It wasn't that every teacher was this creative master's degree, PhD recipient teaching elementary school, junior high school, high school. It wasn't. There were other things. We had the full range. But when the other things showed up, the people who want to fight, the teachers who weren't up to snuff, all this kind of thing, they were surrounded by a standard that was different. And so they were either brought into line or elevated, which is brought into line. That's really what we're talking about, elevating them, or they did fail. But it wasn't because of a lack of investment in their humanity. And it was the lack of investment in Black humanity that disappeared with Brown. It was the evisceration of the teaching force. We'll take 2 or 3 of your Negro children until we can flee, which is where we are now. This book just came out, in fact. Let me see. I had it around here somewhere a minute ago. Here we go. Yeah. They came for the schools. One town's fight over race and identity and the new war for America's classrooms. This is Mike Hickenbach. He's talking about Texas, but he's using it as a metaphor. They want to privatize education. There's never been an education system in this country for everybody because this country wasn't set up for everybody to be fully human. As Nathaniel Briggs said, you Negroes, we want you in the fields and in our homes. Other people, we want you picking our peaches and picking our lettuce and, making sure that you deliver from farm to table so that we can have our delicious meals. I mean, there's some of you all, you poor whites, we want you hammering away in the coal mines and the factories till those go out of business. And then we want you to vote for us on the promise that you too one day will be a millionaire. The weaponized ignorance falls on everyone. But Blackness has not ever been just for Blackness. It's been about opening our full humanity, but not on the terms of whiteness. Is on the terms of injecting, as Du Bois would say, into the veins of this society, in terms of global society, an awareness that comes from a momentum of a memory that is the oldest on the planet. And if we are not embracing that, then we are still striving to be the figments of somebody else's imagination. And those people want to do harm, not only to us, but everybody who is not in their class. We don't have to say, is it race or class? The answer is yes. And when you inject culture in there, it ain't a pathological culture, as we talked about last week. We've got to elevate. So to finish up what Terrence Robinson is saying in this context, these boys fighting in the hall were fighting in the hall in all the segregated schools. It wasn't a nirvana. It wasn't a perfect place. But the structure would lead, when you see that erupt, as it will often erupt in the spaces, to this. Brother Roberts continues, he said, 2 boys being egged on by the bystanders who shouted instructions and offered unsolicited advice to the combatants about how to conduct the fight. Mrs. Dozier walked up just as one of the onlookers yelled, N-words got a chair! N-words got a chair! Not a chair used in Montgomery, Alabama at the dock, but a chair used in black-on-black crime. Black-on-black crime in a society where anything connected to Blackness will be eviscerated, because we saw white on white crime take place in Texas in the summer of 2020. We saw white on white crime take place in Texas in the summer of 2020 when Daniel Perry killed another white man named Garrett Foster. Daniel Perry killed Garrett Foster, who was at the Black Lives Matter protest in the so-called reckoning summer. There wasn't a reckoning at all. And this week, the shovel-mouthed bastard governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, acting upon the advice of a parole board he appointed, pardoned that white man for killing another white man. But it was white on white violence in service of white domination, because the other white man was at the Black Lives Matter rally. So this white man came up and shot him, said he had an AK-47. And the shovel-mouth bastard governor said, well, we take very seriously the idea of stand your ground. Yeah, until it's a black veteran and the hunter comes in and shoots him for having a gun in his hand in his house. Don't play with us, you punk. But again, shout out to Cardi B and all the people who would weaponize that ignorance by saying voting don't matter. What did we hear in office hours on Monday night? Our sister came in and she said, you know what? Y'all think voting don't matter? She said, I don't care about Joe Biden, although I'm going to vote for him because I understand you got to use that as a matter of self-defense too. But I got Greg Abbott in Texas, and I got to worry about that because he the one with that funky board in charge. This is what they're doing now, withdrawing into the state at the state level power. They put that punk Mike Miles in charge of the Houston Independent School District, and he is eviscerating the Houston Independent School District, siphoning money out of Texas, sending it to the charter schools he's got out of state in Colorado, and throwing the books away. If y'all not in office hours, if y'all not in Nubia, if y'all not in Knarrative, y'all didn't hear this, but you should hear it now. You should consider coming in. And I'm not making a campaign for anybody coming in trying to create chaos, because it's not possible. Knarrative and Nubia is like these segregated schools that Terrence Robert and the rest of the Little Rock Nine went to. If it's craziness, we'll embrace it until we get that and get it out of you. Get it out of you. Bubble it out of you. We're going to have that conversation. But she was talking Monday night about how, her uncle works for the school district in Houston, and how he told her they throwing the books away in the libraries. And she said, hold on, I'm coming down to get them. And as he's giving her the books, they tell him, no, you can't give her the books. You have to throw them away. Oh, and she said, y'all think voting don't matter? Boy, if y'all could have heard what I heard yesterday, we're going to come back to that in terms of voting. This is not a commercial for voting. Voting is just a tool. Hell, I voted Tuesday. I voted in the Maryland, primarily right across the street from D.C., well, right over across here, voted in the election. Angela also Brooks, hey, Professor Hunter, everybody. As a man, a liquor store guy, David Trone, how you spend damn near $60 million and still lose to the sister? Why? Because you don't understand. First of all, it was low voter turnout. Shout out to, I saw a couple of my former Howard students who were election judges, did me proud. I said, look at y'all being good citizens. I said, how many people been in here today? And they said, not too many. I said, it's been like this all day. Wasn't nobody in there. So I went in the booth, and I don't mind tell y'all who I voted for president, uncommitted. Damn right. Because see, I'm going to vote for Biden. But in the primary, you need to understand, and guess what? If there's a Palestinian mother who lost her whole family, that's why I voted uncommitted. You're going to stop sending bombs to the greatest mass murderer of this year, this decade, Bibi Netanyahu.
Can you can you pause there for a second, Dr. Carr, because that's all strategy. And I think people don't understand, the difference between doing something in the primary and doing something in the general, and why you voting uncommitted in the primary was a power play. And you voting for Biden in November is not a sellout. It's an understanding of power and how to be a part of making the way for your own community. Can you just 1 minute?
Oh yeah, no, with pleasure, and thank you for allowing me to scroll forward a little bit in the Nubia app. Yes, absolutely, Dory. Thank you. He said it had already been done in Philly, except for the top magnet schools. Yes, I assume you mean they threw the libraries away. I was working as an administrator for the school district of Philadelphia when they started destroying the libraries. I was there when they destroyed the pedagogical library. Professor Hunter, as you've been working on this, and I'm so excited. Again, I'm coming out of this fired up as we embarked on this project that you conceived, my life in books. As we're talking about my life in books, I've been writing notes and filling in these little gaps. So when we continue, one of the things I remember when I started working in the school district of Philadelphia, the school district headquarters that is no longer owned by the school district, it's now condominiums on the Parkway. Shout out to the punk superintendent of schools at the time. What was his name? He then ran for mayor of Chicago. Anyway, I see his face. Anyway, the point is this, not important. They had something called the pedagogical library on the first floor of the school district. I'm sure it's now a cafe or something. It was so beautiful. It was so well appointed. All these books going back decades in the history of the school district, from the 1930s and 40s when the building was built. Paul Vallis. Y'all know Paul Vallis in Chicago, right? Yeah, the one that they put in charge of the schools, and then because he's not an educator, and then he left Chicago and messed up the schools in Philly, and then Katrina hit, he messed up the schools in New Orleans, privatized them. Then he left there and messed up the schools in Connecticut, and he came back to Chicago and thought he was going to be the mayor, and Brandon Johnson beat him in the primary, Democratic primary. But the pedagogical library, I was there when it was destroyed. when they sold the school district building. And in moving to the place they rented for a while, that's now the school district headquarters in Philadelphia on Broad Street, they did not take the library. I was there as they were throwing books out. And Dana King, who was the director of African American Studies at the time, and myself, we just went over and started taking books. I have a number of books in my collection that were in the trash because they destroyed. So you're absolutely right, Dory. They destroyed the libraries in Philadelphia too. They call them resource centers now, except ain't no books in them. And this happens at university too. I saw them throw books away by the thousands at Howard University a few summers ago. So I've seen that happen. But yeah, in terms of voting, in that context, in the context of what I was saying, when you are an informed member of society, you understand how these things work in terms of power. Political power comes from organization. The protest vote, the non-committed vote in Michigan, the non-committed vote in Maryland was about 10% of the vote in a very low turnout election where a white candidate, U.S. Congressman, gave up his seat to run for the United States Senate, David Trump, against a black woman, Angela Also Brooks, who was endorsed by most of the Democratic establishment, including the governor of Maryland, the rising star, Wes Moore, who won that primary, by the way. Angela Also Brooks for about 10%, who will be running in November against a white nationalist named Larry Hogan, who the white nationalist media, New York Times, Washington Post, Baltimore Sun, describes, and so many people parroting that line, call a moderate. He is not a moderate. He's just a little softer voiced white nationalist. And they're saying that, Maryland is overwhelmingly Democratic. He should win unless there's not a lot of voter turnout. In a primary, voting non-committed or uncommitted, for me, and for a lot of people, I think, who are thinking in a similar vein, who are really thinking about this in a global sense, because I don't think about the United States in just the U.S. sense. That was on display yesterday, as I'll return to and talk about in a minute. We started talking about this question of the meaning of Brown, the meaning of Little Rock Nine, the meaning of Briggs versus Elliott, the meaning of Bowling versus Sharp, the D.C. case, and all these things, and how every year, and then on the big decade years, like the 70th anniversary, the 50th, the 60th anniversary, they reinforced this false narrative of what these people were fighting for. I don't think about it in terms of U.S. narrative. I think about the U.S. in a global context. What we are seeing is the slaughter of Palestinians, a mass murder, an international crime, threats against the international system, which is deeply flawed and deeply problematic. But anytime white nationalists like chinless Tom Cotton and his friends in the United States Senate threaten the International Criminal Court and the International Court of Justice, something the United States is not a member of, signatory to, then you understand you've hit a pressure point. Joe Biden is vastly superior, Biden and Harris and that administration, vastly superior to the fascists who are salivating to get back into office. The fascists who, if and when they get back into office, Cardi B will say, this is racist from her home outside the United States. While the people who can't leave are subject to everything from deportation to stop and frisk to First Amendment. What First Amendment? You got a whole ass Supreme Court justice, the Christian soldier Samuel Alito, flying his flag upside down in his neighborhood, talking about stop the steal. And then when they called him on it, he did what all these heroic men do: blame their wives. I mean, when are we go? So for me, being informed on how global politics affect local politics, going into the booth and voting uncommitted for Joe Biden does not mean I'm going to vote uncommitted, because I am absolutely committed to human freedom. And that human freedom is not just about Palestine. The New York Times ran a silly article this week about why protest hasn't emerged at HBCUs, because they don't know a damn thing about historically black colleges and universities. And I'm gonna come back to that in a minute. I don't want to get too far ahead over my skis, because today is a special day. Ajwa Bakwe Osmond is getting her PhD, and I'm gonna go to the ceremony at George Washington. That's why we started early today for the Nubians and everybody in YouTube who was here. It was here at 6:30. But
And we will be streaming Dr. Daniel Black's commencement.
yes, Danny Black. Listen,
That starts at 8:00 a.m. Eastern at Clark, Atlanta. So we're going to stream it here so the Nubians can chat during it.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, I was going to say, I had to mention that because I would be in Atlanta. I was going to Atlanta for Dan Black. And then when they said, oh, Biden's going to be there too, so good, I'll be over there too. I was going to bear witness to that, but I can't because Ajua is the reason that the two of us are together.
Exactly.
And I gotta go see my girl. That's my sister. So I had to go see her graduation. Of course, the convergence is just, I mean, Dan is going to be giving a speech on Malcolm X's birthday and Lorraine Hansberry's birthday and Yuri Kochiyama's birthday. And of course, y'all go to in class number 62 if you want to see how we talked about that in that camp. We have the archive. And shout out to the Black students at Columbia University who had their commencement ritual, since Columbia canceled the big one, had their commencement ritual at Big Bethel AME Zion in Harlem. And to see those pictures, and by the way, it warmed my heart, not only because it was at Bethel Zion, AME Zion in Harlem, that was one of the few places in our governance formation, coming out of our governance formation, that when this social structure stripped Essie and Paul Robeson of their passports and basically cratered their finances, it was one of the few places where Paul Robeson was able to perform in front of audiences to keep feeding his family, because that church was, of course, pastored by Ben Robeson, his brother. So, I mean, to see those Black people step up and say, don't worry about Black students, we got y'all. Anybody else want to come? But, let's be very clear. Blackness is going to obviate that. So when I walked in that booth and voted uncommitted, it was to continue to put the pressure on the Biden-Harris administration. Do you think for a minute, even though Israel got 1 billion bombs, do you think the two they said they weren't going to ship them right now, that signal would have been given at all? Had it not been for the pressure, for having them reading the polls, if it had not been for them seeing those percentages of people voting uncommitted, no, it wouldn't have happened. And guess what? That's not enough. But you know why that is important? It ain't because they don't have bombs to kill. Because they basically created a kill box in Rafah, and they're going to continue to kill BB and them. But guess what? What that little move did was trigger all the billionaires giving to the schools that are calling saying, break up those encampments. Triggered people like Jerry Seinfeld and his wife, spending that money. And no, nobody wants to call out settler colonialism and Zionism. Do you know why those topics are now in the white stream entertainment mass media? Because enough people have put pressure on it. And in the primaries, you put pressure like that and it sends the signal. And here's where it can go off the rails. People who think that then should carry over into November aren't paying attention. And so what we have to do is, and I'm glad you paused us here to really articulate this. What we have to do is to communicate with each other the fact that these are two different things. This is not that. Because if and when, I'm not talking about Robert Kennedy Jr., I'm not talking about Cornell, my friend Cornell West, or my friend Melina Abdullah, who's running on his ticket. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm not talking about November. I'm not talking about if low turnout comes combined with voter suppression, Trump wins, gets sworn in, forget the crimes. It's all legal. Why? Because you got a whole insurrectionist flying his flag upside down in Virginia, and another one whose wife is a whole insurrectionist. They ain't never going to recuse themselves. All these calls for recusal are hilarious to me. What you're going to see is that if they get back in, all these people was like, both them parties are the same, gonna be singing a different tune, but our fault is that we was listening to y'all in the first place. So the work we have to do now, between now and November in the United States, is to continue to elevate, which is why this platform is important, and all the platforms are important. Elevate voter education. That kept coming up yesterday too, from these elders. Elevate how you understand how these things work together so that you can understand this is not that, and stop listening to disinformation and weaponized ignorance. Of course I'm voting for Biden. I can't stand Biden and Harris, but I'm not stupid. I'm not ignorant. When I say I can't stand them, I'm not talking about every single policy, because there are a number of policies that have been pushed that are advancing the interests of those who are less, economically less, equity projects, infusion of everything from broadband access to transportation hubs to try to lower costs for prescription medicine. There's a tally, and you talk about it every day, Prof. Lurie, you talk about it every day. I mean, El Joy, I mean, you talk about, you go down the list. Our people talk about that all the time. Pam Keith, all the time. Now, we have to be strategic and we have to be informed. So this is not that. These fascists get back in, them very same people that telling y'all everything's the same, they on planes. They behind gates. And the people who aren't, they're going to be the ones screaming bloody murder. And our fault is that somehow, particularly after desegregation, we start listening to ball players and entertainers for politics. Now, we can give each other some grace in that, because there was a moment when those two things kind of converged, and you could get a Bill Russell, you could get a Muhammad Ali. But those days are gone. Those days are gone. Now it's Gil's Arena and Club Shay Shay, the leading intellectuals in our community. Now it's the Breakfast Club, the leading intellectuals in our community. And then if you want to know finally how this is non-threatening, look at who is elevated to talk in the white spaces, and one by one, they will show you. We're not talking about Ali Velshi. We're certainly not talking about Mehdi Hassan. We're talking about these are the Negroes who we kind of play around with. And if you keep listening, you'll find out what side of the bread the butter is on when somebody makes a statement like, oh, those students at the college campuses are like the January 6th insurrectionists. And at that point, even Mika, who daddy was a whole global strategist at the senior element, had to turn and say to Al Sharpton, oh, no. Oh, right. What is you doing, baby? Anytime Mika starts sound like a black one, what is you doing, baby? Then you understand you've gone a bridge too far, sir. You don't have to dance for the coin that hard. But the point is this is not that. The primary is not the general election. And if you know what you're doing, you can use that vote as a tool to push. And finally, for those who would say we need to stay out of Palestine, it ain't got to do with us, I suggest you look at people like my friend Sam Livingston down at Morehouse, who will be at that commencement because his students are graduating, and all his colleagues who have been working with Friends of the Congo. This is a very interesting book called Cobalt Red: How the Blood of the Congo Powers Our Lives by Siddharth Carr. This came out last year. Cobalt Red: How the Blood of the Congo Powers Our Lives. He's talking about in this book all of the ways cobalt is an essential component to almost every lithium-ion rechargeable battery made today. The batteries that power smartphones, tablets, laptops, electric vehicles. In other words, the devices that are allowing us to be in community this morning. Roughly 75% of the world's supply of cobalt is mined in the Congo, often dug by hand for pennies a day by desperate men, women, and children. Artisanal miners is what they call them, in subhuman, dangerous, and toxic conditions. By the time you get to the end of this book, in the epilogue where he ends with Patrice Lumumba's letter to his wife before he is assassinated, it talks about all the mine collapses in 2020, 2021, 2022. Children buried by the dozens, by the hundreds, when the mine collapses on them, digging out the metal that allows us to have cell phones. And if you think for a minute, New York Times or anybody else who don't know a damn thing about historically black colleges and universities, or any black space for that matter, I don't care if you sprinkle a Maya Phillips or a Wesley Lowery or a Nicole Hannah-Jones or Charles Blow, or you sprinkle a few around there, Jamel Bowie. Yeah, you can sprinkle a few black people and they will speak truth to power from time to time. But your institution is white supremacist. When you write an article on why haven't HBCUs broken out in protest, it's not your story to tell. And I'm going to come back to that in a minute because we're going to wind up in a couple of minutes anyway. But they are connecting the dots. They're connecting the dots at Morehouse between the Congo and Palestine and what's going on in Sudan and what's going on in Darfur, where you see now a renewed attack by Arabs on the Africans, the non-Arab Africans in Darfur. You see them connecting the dots because the dots are connected, as we talked about last week, between what's going on with a new invading force coming into Haiti led by the Kenyans. Rucho and his wife will be here for a state dinner at the end of this month. I think the 23rd, 24th, or 25th, they'll be here while they're preparing to invade Haiti again. All those dots are connected. It's world imperialism. Let's be very clear. And what Israel has gotten over its skis as a settler colony, as the eyes of the West in that region, using religion as a pretense because Jewish Israelis and Jews around the world who have come out and said, I am a Jew. This is my way of knowing, and my way of knowing is pro-life, anti-death, and I stand against the murderous regime of the Israeli Defense Force and Bibi Netanyahu. That pressure, that global pressure for our common humanity against these people, whether it be in the form of a protest or an encampment on a college campus or a vote in a booth in a primary, sends a message. We stand with our common humanity. And it's that same common humanity that will stand against these white nationalists who are going to try to get back in charge of the federal government in November. It's the same fight in different strategic moments. Never forget that the thing that we stand in, as Terrence Roberts is writing about here is our common humanity, which is why he said when his homeroom teacher would lock that door and school them on being in the world beyond the subject matter, stepped in the middle of that fight between two dudes using the N-word, and now they got a chair. He goes on and says, I remember the stunned look on her face as she witnessed this scene. Quickly, she intervened and broke up the fight. Then she herded her students into the classroom and sent the rest of the students to their own homerooms. It took several minutes for her just to compose herself enough to speak to us. And when she did, she very calmly explained to us the great difference between what had happened in the hallway and what she dreamed about and imagined for us. She spoke to us that morning about the need for us to make wise and healthy choices in life, to consider at every moment the consequences of our actions, the choice to fight in a school hallway, the sheer audacity of desecrating an institution of higher learning, for bystanders to encourage such utter nonsense. This was, in her mind, one of the worst things she could possibly imagine. Pause. Elizabeth Eckford being yelled at by these white students coming from behind her, the National Guard not protecting her. They talked to Little Rock Nine about how it wasn't just a few bad apples. It was the institution and the parents and the community terrified for their lives. Elizabeth Eckford said, I live 28 blocks away from Central High School. Terrence lived very near. He could walk. I wanted to walk, but I was terrified of what would happen if I tried to do them 28 blocks between home and school. The idea during the question and answer, a young brother stood up who teaches at Dunbar here in D.C., my beloved Dunbar. I texted Nubia afterward, Urema, and said, I was glad he bore witnesses. He said, y'all probably heard they had another set of shootings around Dunbar, people shooting into the school. He said there were students on both sides of it. He says, I understand this history. I'm grateful for this, but our students aren't getting this. And he's right. That Black Studies Academy at Dunbar, I'm grateful for it. And those teachers are fighting against an entire society that have tried to dehumanize these young people. And so even surrounding them, we got to do a better job, which is why I said in this space, in Knarrative, in Nubia, and then when we here on YouTube week after week after week, it's now time, got to elevate this thing. This intro class, this intro 2.0, we're going to go again. It's got to be even better. And in this place for people who don't have resources, some of whom I saw yesterday at this meeting, security guards, people in the NAACP, folk, from all walks of life who were like, we're here on Saturdays, week after week after week. Some of them in Nubia, some of them in YouTube. I said, now I got an obligation. We all, not you, not the two of, we all have an obligation. We got to elevate this now to another level, even beyond this. Everything must be renegotiated. Everything must be rewritten. I'm very proud and happy about the work we've done over the last 4 years. And now it's got to take another leap. Not that I didn't already know that, but when you're looking in the face of an 85-year-old or 82-year-old or a 75-year-old, like Brother Briggs, I'm 75. This has been my whole life. It's the 70th anniversary of Brown. I'm 75. I was a shock trooper in that army. It was my parents who were threatened, who lost their jobs. It was the parents. And one sister was like, her family had to leave. Chance Roberts' family had to move to California. Minnie Jean Brown, and thank you, Mama Minnie Jean, because she said, Dr. Carr, you hard on them dolls. I said, I know, I am hard on them dolls, Mama Minnie Jean. I'm hard on them dolls. Them Kenneth Clark dolls, Kenneth the Mamie Clark dolls. And she said, I understand. She said, and at the same time, I lived with the Clarks. Because remember, Faubus closed the schools in Arkansas and hoping that then one thing they would do was nullify the case because the students were no longer enrolled in school, so they would have standing. They took correspondence courses. In Minnie Jean Brown's case, she literally moved to New York. And every day, Mamie and Kenneth Clark would drive her into the school, the high school that was in the same building as their institute. So the point you raised at the beginning, Prof, people who are well-meaning, people who are brilliant, people who are committed like Kenneth and Mamie Clark, still that doll test reinforcing the idea that Black inferiority is bred from segregation, contradicting what those who are in the segregated schools say about what was poured into them, was used in a way to shape a narrative that says the solution to Black inferiority is proximity to whiteness. It is absurd. But at the same time, it does not negate the fact that these brilliant Black people, nobody would question the Clarks brilliant, compassionate Black people. Minnie Jean Brown lived with them until she graduated from high school. Mamie Brown had a dress made for her for graduation that's now in the National Museum of African American History and Culture. And in that moment, I'm so deeply grateful with that elder, sitting with her, spending time with her yesterday, and especially Thursday when we got a chance to spend some time. To know that that sister is in this space and she's not alone. Every day we find out people, some other people I'll tell you a little bit later who are in here too. And you know who y'all know who y'all are. And who are in here with us, that tells you, we have a responsibility. We have a responsibility. So that same N-word that's being bandied about in this school fight, this sister called him back to the room, shut it down, poured into them, and then finally she said she spent several minutes talking to us about the use of the word nigger. To her, anyone who used this term was agreeing to remain on the lower levels of human existence. To her, anyone who used this term was agreeing to remain on the lower levels of human existence. To her, anyone who used this term was agreeing to remain on the lower levels of human existence. Can you use the term? Sure. Do we use the term? We do use that term. Is it respectable? Yes. Part of the politics of respectability for those who use the term is it is respectable to use the N-word. Understood completely. But to her, anyone who used this term was agreeing to remain on the lower levels of human existence. That's the respectability politics of that term. He writes, to identify oneself or another human being as an N-word was to communicate to the world that white people were right, that all black people were just niggas. They want you in the fields. They want you in their houses. So why bother trying to treat them any other way? She pleaded with us to think seriously about what she was saying and reminded us of the need to become responsible citizens. I remember the disappointed look on her face that morning. I resolved at that point to make even greater efforts to pay close attention to my behavior. We've all had teachers like that. As Leslie Fenwick said in her remarks on Thursday night at Howard University School of Law, she said, and she opens her book with this. She said, my mother, she's from Ohio, several generations of HBCU grads in her family. She said, my mother and her friends, they would have card parties, and they'd come over for dinner, and they would sit around and debate each other on whose segregated school faculty was best. Well, my English teacher went to Fisk and then to Columbia. My English teacher went to Texas Southern and then to the University of Chicago. My English teacher went to Dunbar High School and then to Howard University, and then she went to New York University. I mean, they would brag about their teachers. I sat there thinking, I wonder if we could have that again. I feel the weight and responsibility, the exhilaration of responsibility. We have established a beachhead with Knarrative and Nubian. Time to take this to the next level. Collective work and responsibility. We got to green the brown fields of amnesia and miseducation. 70th anniversary of Brown, all about the ass whippings? No, listen to these elders. No, because it makes America comfortable for us to think about black people as the punching bags of American democracy, trying to improve American democracy. Hell, go there. No, we're already there. Is it the same as in Brown? No, it was not. No, it is not. Don't think things haven't changed. Again, I have to go back to that panel that Nicole moderated yesterday with descendants of Briggs versus Elliott, Nathaniel Briggs. And of course, Brother Briggs, of course, is all in this book. Remember when I was down there with Cecil Williams in Columbia, South Carolina? Shout out again to Bernie Gallman and to all the folks down there. Cat Adams took me over and he signed my book. This is Out of the Box in Dixie, Cecil Williams' photography of the South Carolina events that changed America. So you think about this, the first chapter, the beginning of the Civil Rights Movement, the real beginning, Somerton, Clarendon County, South Carolina. And you have J.A. Joseph Albert Delane. This is the brother who was the driving force initially behind Briggs versus Elliott. And so when listening to Briggs yesterday, Terrence Briggs, I mean, look at this. Steering Committee for the Freedom Movement and the NAACP, look who's sitting at the center of this. 5 months before the Montgomery bus boycott, there's Constance Baker Motley in Orangeburg, South Carolina. Cecil Williams got a camera the year after they filed Briggs versus Elliott in 1948, and he has documented the whole thing. Look at his school library. They didn't have resources, but guess what they had? They done thrown the damn books away in Houston. They done thrown the damn books away in Philly and all over this country. And they might have had a building, but damn it, they bought some books. Look at this. Look at that right there. This is a school library in rural Williamsburg County, South Carolina, 1960. Yes, right, young man. Them your books, baby. They may not have great bookshelves, but you got the books and you're going to study because, as Terrence Roberts said, first grade teacher said, you got to be an executive director. Look at this. Black students at Mount Carmel School in Calhoun County, adjacent to Clarendon County. School bus. They got them a bus. Let me tell you right here. What you going to do? All these people, if they still alive, are elders. You going to look them in the face and say things ain't changed? You going to look them in the face and say you ain't going to vote? You better stop playing with black people's lives. They got their best clothes on. For you to come somewhere talking about they are the same. Shut the... Calm down. Everybody calm down. Here's the beginning. Look at this. Look at this. Look. Cecil Williams, I think he took a picture of everything black in South Carolina for the last 70 years. I swear. Here's Sam Cooke. Cecil Williams, take a picture. Sam Cooke, internationally famed soul and R&B singer, performing before a segregated audience at Columbia Township Auditorium in 1960. Here, a change is going to come. He wrote that in 63. Part 1, the real beginnings of the civil rights movement. And I don't have time to go through all of it. I just want to see if I can get a picture of, look. Here's Cecil Williams as a young man, chilling with his camera, taking this portrait, right? This is 1954. And you see here this an elderly lady in her backyard in Ellery, South Carolina, holding a chicken that might become today's table treat. 1950s, low income, sacrifices, putting their money together. Brother Briggs said, you know what it means when the NAACP comes into your community? Thurgood Marshall getting off the train, coming in. As they said, the NAACP is coming in. This is what the NAACP meant to people, and it still means to people. And finally, here are the petitioners in Briggs versus Elliott, y'all. Harry Briggs, his wife, all of them. Look at these black women and men. They were solicited because they were property owners. The first petition had 100 names, but most of the people weren't property owners, which means they could dismiss them for standing, or they could put them off their land. Remember what happened to Fannie Lou Hamer and Pap Hamer in Mississippi? So they had to find. Imagine the courage, man. When we look here, look. Let me kind of. Oh my gosh! When Briggs choked up yesterday, it says not anger is pain. When Nathaniel Briggs sat there, when John Stokes, who was in Virginia, where they shut the schools for 5 years, Prince Edward County, the whole state of Virginia, and the white boys passed a rule that said you could take public dollars and put it into private education. Then they came for the schools. This ain't 1954. This is 2024. These white boys playing the same game. We must crush them. They must be destroyed intellectually, politically, and culturally in order to be remade. This settler state is in the DNA. This is just the latest flare-up. This is the immune deficiency syndrome at the heart of the enterprise of settler colonialism. It is a Western thing in general and a United States thing in particular. There was no education system in this country set up for everybody because this country was not set up for everybody because it was invaded. You displace humans, you bring other humans, you enslave millions of other humans, and then when they fight their way out of it, you try to keep them in the same formation in a different moment. And they still fight their way out of it. And for one brief moment in time, while you had them trapped and you couldn't have a class stratification, a full class stratification, they were working on a concept of trying to be together. And then you put a little pressure valve in, you take a few of them out, then the class formation now can continue. You maintain the segregation, schools more segregated now than they were before. And you celebrate the progress by making the false progress the center of the narrative, by making the trauma the center of the narrative. And then you mute the voices of the people that say, no. But our job is to recover the momentum of our memory. So yesterday, listening to Joan Johns Cobbs, that's Barbara Cobb's sister. In other words, another niece of the great Vernon Johns, Barbara Johns' sister. Talk about what happened in Virginia and to hear, again, J.R. Stokes, who was a cheerleader at Robert Russo Moton, the black school in Virginia, who said, we started our own Manhattan Project. Of the 5 cases in Brown, it was Davis versus County School Board in Virginia that was the one that was triggered by the teenagers. It was the students who did that. So you put those 5 cases together. People, Brown versus Board of Education. Yes, it was very important. Oliver Brown, his family, very important. But understand, Briggs versus Elliott. Again, Mike has written about this, talking about this. So many people. Briggs versus Elliott. These black people What do we want? We want a bus, first of all. Shit. And while we at it, we're going to get a building. First of all, sticking with white people, that ain't entering my mind. My teacher's better than your teachers anyway. And when we come to your schools, as they did in Central, as they talked about yesterday, your teachers are inferior. And then when she complained to the principal, you know what the principal said? Oh, no. That woman has a degree from the University of Chicago. Well, shit, everybody in my damn school had 2 or 3 degrees. That don't surprise me. Yeah, but you keep talking, you'll get suspended. What the hell? What the entire holy hell to listen to Joan Anderson, who's the daughter of Leon and Beulah Anderson, that Claymont High School in Delaware, the case from Delaware, Belton versus Gebhardt, the case litigated by Jack Greenberg and Lewis Redding, whose son Saunders Redding became a great scholar of literature scholar, many years at Cornell University, black scholar. You know, when Nathaniel Briggs said they wanted us in the fields and the houses, it created a different thing. They could have solved this with a school bus, you know, and said that integration worked in Delaware. It didn't take away our cultural values. Something else Mr. Briggs said yesterday, said, when you are poor, nobody writes you a check. So here we are funding our own liberation, contributing little by little to a platform that grows and grows and creates a space where we can have these candid conversations. And now when we talk about the devaluation of teaching in this society, which seems like it's permanent, it isn't just the craft of teaching that has been devalued in this society. It is what it symbolizes. When Terrence Roberts said in the first grade at Mifflin Wistar Gibbs Elementary School, my teacher said you got to be chief executive of your own education. He said, I started my academy in the first grade after that. At that moment, I'm going to tell y'all, something changed in my mind. That's when my determination redoubled again. We got to use this work as a clean glass. So in office hours on Monday night, I hope we can continue to talk about this. This is what we call it the renewed normal in Nubia. It ain't a new normal, although there is newness in it. It's a renewed normal. I'm never going to, I'm going to stop saying the Negro's not ready. The Negro's always ready to transcend this point. And when we talk about that, the destruction of our institutions, we can replace our momentum, not use our children as battering rams. We got to, desegregation replaced that moment with an unblocked class stratification with tensions then that express themselves in I ain't gonna vote, weaponized ignorance, entertainers and celebrities now shaping public dialogue. The phantom of whiteness is now centered, not just color, but cultural aspiration. Cultural aspiration. I mean, for the culture means pathology far too much. And we've commingled this kind of cultural stakes. What's at stake? We've affixed it to geography and to nation states so that, Derek Johnson could talk about black children being inspired by blackness in Africa and saying, and that's the reason why we got to get this diversity, equity, and inclusion here. Okay, I get the diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then empty that into, because that's what's going to allow this country to remain competitive and remain a leader. Hold on, man. You just drove that whole thing into the ditch of the nation state? Somebody said yesterday that they're going to name a nuclear submarine for the Little Rock Nine. That's progress. You know why? No, but I mean, but Prof, this is what happens when we're not very clear. The villain of this piece is the nation state. From that very same stage, when the 1619 Project launched, and Nicole and Jake Silverstein, editor of the New York Times Magazine, invited me down to be on one of the panels. This is what I said. The villain of the piece is the nation state. A human being who doesn't have papers is considered less human than a human being who does. And all our narratives of progress are shaped around which passport we have access to. And that was never the center of the long freedom movement of human beings. So it is progress to name a nuclear submarine for the Little Rock Nine if you think that the whole goal of this was to make your country better than somebody else's country, and you shouldn't be talking about Palestine or Congo. You shouldn't be talking about Sudan or what's happening in the rest of the world. You shouldn't be talking about the fact that Putin and Xi Jinping met this week in China in their big summit, and while the United States is talking about rap beefs, they talking about how we going to divvy up the world in the next iteration. And when the American Negro sees the price going up on Agent Wilson's new signature shoe and gets mad, maybe then you'll figure out that this was never about a flag and a country. So go on back and watch the next round of the NBA playoffs and numb yourself until they come knocking at your door because you didn't vote. And the people in power now have decided that the Constitution, as Gil Scott-Heron said, is a noble piece of paper, but it don't mean nothing else. Terrence Roberts said, he said, I wish that every child in America could get access to the quality of education that I got in the segregated schools. When he said that Thursday night, I was just very happy because I had asked him before he went up, I hope y'all get a chance to mention this. And that came in the wake of what Leslie had said about the displacement of Black teachers. But I wish that were true. I wish that were true. What if every child in the United States of America got access to the level of quality that many Black children got in the segregated schools? That would be a quality education, PhDs, master's degrees, people who went to HBCUs and segregated schools themselves, elevating you. Say, I know I'm teaching you math, but close that door. If I ever hear what you just said again, we're going to have a problem because you are a human being. You are not that word. And I'm saying irrespective of color. It's very important. So we can pause there for a minute and we'll go and see our sister.
Yes. And please tell her I said hello and thank you again eternally. I'm going to hit play on the commencement. We're going to celebrate our brother Dr. Daniel Black, Baba Omatosha as well.
Yes.
Nubia, y'all will be able to comment and chat with one another during it in Nubia. Because it's a different experience than
no question
on the YouTube. But I imagine the YouTube on Clark Atlanta was probably nice too. So
Oh yeah, because I think the live stream is available, so anybody who wants to see it can. But we'll be chatting to Nubia, so I'll be on the app on the train on the way down. So
all right.
Love you.
Safe travels. Love you too.
You.
All right, everyone, have a wonderful rest of your day, and see some of y'all on Monday. I'll be doing a morning show on Sirius XM starting at 7 a.m. on channel 126. So I hope to see some of you there, and the rest of you Nubians Sunday, Dr. Sunyata. All right, everyone, have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your weekend.
It's a journey characterized by perseverance, determination, and unshakable fortitude in the face of immense difficulties. Reflecting to our early days, we enter high school with dreams as vast as the sky and hearts filled with anticipation. Little did we know, our path would be defined by a global pandemic that one would test our resolves in ways we never imagined. On March 13, 2020, everything was bright. College decisions were being made, common activities are being planned, the sky was the limit.